flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will grant Westwood Media Center permission to record the meeting. Is there anyone else wishing to record tonight's meeting? Okay. Two updates under Chairman's update. First, I want to inform the town of some very good news. The housing production plan that the Housing Partnership and our housing specialist, Sarah Bouchard, worked on with various boards and people throughout town for a number of months has been approved, and it was done very promptly. So we have a letter sent to the town that effective January 3rd, 2020, the DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, or something like that it stands for, has officially approved the town's housing production plan pursuant to 760. You can tell me what the CMR stands for?
Code of Massachusetts
Code
Regulation.
of Massachusetts Regulation. And so we're very happy to have that. That's an important accomplishment. Having the production plan helps in many ways. One is it's an insurance policy for us in the event that with the 2020 census, the town were to fall below 10% affordable housing. Having a housing production plan that we work towards promptly would buy us a grace period. That's one aspect. And it also informs what we're doing with housing and how we're providing additional affordable housing in town. So congratulations to Sarah, the Housing Partnership, and the entire town for this accomplishment. Very good news. My other update, I'd like to invite the chief forward with our newest police officer. Kindia, please join him. One tradition we have in town is that when the chief hires new police officers, he brings them before the select board. And tonight, it's your turn. And Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, first and foremost, thank you to the board for having us here. I always appreciate the support and the interest that you have in the hiring process. It's a group project. A lot of different town department heads and leadership and meetings behind the scene take place before we get to where we got here. So we certainly appreciate that. Sitting to my right, I'm very excited to introduce to you Kindia Roman. Kindia, as far as I'd say entry-level police officers go, if there's a better entry-level police officer hire anywhere, you better find him or her, because she's just absolutely outstanding. I've been doing this a long time, and I was delighted when she applied with us. She brings a very unusual, in terms of the quantity and quality of experience, to the table for us. So Kindia started off as a paralegal, and the attorney that she worked for was a mentor to her and suggested that she go to law school. So she went and she got her law degree. And while she enjoyed law school and she enjoyed being a paralegal, she really felt like she wanted to be more involved with the community. So she stuck it out because that's in her nature, and she didn't want to quit. But she said, I really feel like I'd like to take my knowledge of the law and put it out into the community and into the streets. And she's always had an interest in criminal justice, and that was her undergraduate degree. So she went down to Florida, and she worked as a police officer in a city in Florida. So she was able to get all the benefits of working in a bigger and busier place. It's just high volume contacts, from the small things that you would see in any town USA, but also some of the more serious things. And it's tough to get that experience. You can read about it in a book or study it in the academy, but it's different when you actually get to do it. Kindia is also bicultural. She's bilingual, so that was very valuable to her down in Florida, and it's certainly very valuable to her back here. She grew up in Massachusetts in the Lawrence area, and after being in Florida, as much as she liked it, she wanted to come back to Massachusetts. So
The weather's better here, right?
Yeah.
I agree. Pretty.
So she came back home here to Massachusetts. She worked on Martha's Vineyard as a police officer. She then got promoted as a supervisor, and during her time there, she got to take all that bigger city experience and combine it with I'd call some local or smaller town policing. And she got the chance to really follow cases through and see that real personal contact that we're lucky enough to get to see in a smaller town, which is sometimes the downside of working in a big city. You're going from call to call to call to call, but you don't always get to see it through. She got her sexual assault certification. She was a field training officer. She was a supervisor. And she was happy to be back home, but, you know, her family and her friends are here on the mainland. So she was looking for a job, and that's when she, here on the mainland, and she was looking for us. And in the interest of accelerating that and not knowing how well she would do, humble person that she is, I could have told you that she was a real shark in the fish tank with her resume. She took a job at Simmons University, where she was a campus police officer. But that's also a very interesting background to me as the chief for people that have that experience, because in the academic setting, that's yet another area of policing, like when we're dealing with our youth, or we're dealing with, you know, some of our businesses, a library, different things like that. It's a different type of community, it's a different type of community policing, and it's tough sometimes to get that experience. And she was able to get that experience in working with the faculty and the staff and the students and the parents. And while she was working there, she made her way to the top, the very top of our hiring process. She came out number 1, and we made her a job offer, and we were very excited that she accepted it. And so, to make a long story a little bit shorter.
Jeff, really?
I'm impressed you do it without notes.
Yeah, because it comes from the heart. So,
Yeah.
I'm very proud to introduce to you and to the town Kindia Roman.
Well, Kindia, that's quite the background. Very impressive, and the chief does his due diligence, so you're clearly deserving to be here. Westwood is really a wonderful community, and our police officers, our firefighters, our DPW, all our public safety are really important to this community. So we welcome you.
Thank
and
you.
hope you have a long, very great career here in Westwood.
I'm looking forward to it. Definitely.
Thank you.
I
Gentlemen?
would just echo what Nancy said and welcome. And we've met, so I really hope it's a long, prosperous career. Welcome.
Looking forward to it.
I like to meet them here, Jeff, because I don't want to meet them when I'm out there. So, as you probably don't know, my dad's a retired police officer, so I know it's a great profession, and glad to have you in town.
I think it's an honor to be here, honestly. It's genuinely a very nice place to live. You can see the community feel to it, along with just kind of the bond that exists here in the police station, so that was very important to me.
And
Yeah.
I believe everything Jeff said, except that you love law school, because I don't think everybody loves it.
Well, she didn't love property class. I think the rest of it was okay. So.
No,
Well,
welcome.
great,
Thanks.
great. And we look forward to seeing you in town.
absolutely.
I guess you have a few training things to go through right now?
Sure.
Yeah,
Well, thanks, but I'll be out there soon.
good. Well, terrific. And thank you, Jeff, for bringing
Yeah, it's a
Kindia
great
before
tradition.
us. And we're really happy to have you on board.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
And you
Appreciate
can
it.
see how a Westwood Select Board meeting goes, or not, whichever you would like to do. But we're going to move on to our next item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We have many items, well, I won't say many, we have a few items on our agenda tonight for scheduled action. Nora, if you could come forward, and I know we have representatives for Patron Westwood LLC. Does anybody want to come forward and join Nora?
Mary McGrail?
Chris, maybe you can give them the microphone just in case. Well, no, you know what?
Oh,
Hold
okay.
on. I think we're going to be okay.
got the microphone.
All right. We just have those microphones. It picks it up for our viewing audience. So, okay. So I'm going to start by saying, welcome. We're very glad you're here because we've been looking forward to meeting somebody who would take over the space of Bonefish Grill. It's been something we've wanted for, I don't know, it's been a couple years or more now that building's been vacant. So, Nora, I'm going to turn it over to you because I'm sure you have some comments you would like to make, and we'll ask questions.
Sure. So the new restaurant, the proposed name is Casa Loca, and it's a Mexican concept restaurant. Frank is the manager of record of the restaurant. I believe you previously were involved with Isabella's
I own
in
that,
Dedham.
yeah.
In Dedham.
I remember you from that. I
It was a very popular restaurant
Yeah.
for Westwoodians. And the Casa Loca is being proposed by the patron Westwood LLC, which is part of the Grand Slam Restaurant Concepts LLC, and they have 14 restaurants in northeastern Massachusetts. Some you'd be familiar with are the Chateau and the locals that are in various towns. So I think this is your first Mexican concept
Yep.
Okay.
restaurant. The building has its building permits now to go ahead and do renovations. It's
Okay.
expected it will be about 8 to 10 weeks of work before they'll be ready to open, so could be as soon as early to mid-April.
Fabulous. And I see you've already gone through the ABCC documents, supplied all of those. You've begun permitting with Health Building and Fire Department, and manager will be Frank Santo?
Correct.
Oh, you said that before. Thank you. We know you're tip certified and that the staff will be tip certified and verified before the opening of the restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
And beyond that, it's great. You obviously have a reputation nearby. The restaurant chain, I think many of us have heard of the other restaurants and know them. So that's all good, which means you've got experience handling the alcohol license, which we take very seriously. And obviously, you know what that means in other communities and the importance of diligence and adhering to the requirements. So that's terrific. So questions from the board?
I'm good.
We open by Cinco de Mayo.
Yes, hopefully, that's the goal.
That's the goal.
The Alcohol Review Commission reviewed it and unanimously recommended approval.
Okay. Anything you guys want to say? You've gone to the trouble of being here.
If we could.
Yes, please.
Just want to point out, my name is Jim McGrail, counsel for the LLC, the applicant, and the town has been extremely doing this stuff in cities and towns across Massachusetts. And Karen couldn't have been better. Jared, the whole gang has been, the fire department,
Good.
everyone has been very receptive to us coming here, been very helpful working with us and moving along as quickly as possible. So we really appreciate that. It's quite a testament to the town and staff, and they were very serious about it, very,
Yeah.
excellent questions. There was no, okay, don't worry about it. It was, they made us dot our i's and cross our
Sure.
t's, but all very, very professional and all very helpful in the process with us, and we just wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, that's great to hear, and as I said when I started out, we're very happy you're here because we do want to see that building on University Avenue vibrant again, and it's nothing we could control. We couldn't make somebody come into it. We don't own it. It's there, and this is really a great redirection for that property. So I think you'll find you will be very welcomed by the community and people in surrounding communities who like to go to the University Avenue area and go to University Station. So we hope that it's a very strong success there and very positive. Okay, so we have some motions?
Yes, we definitely wish that you prosper down there and stay for a while.
Yes.
All right, so I move that we grant approval to a new Section 12, all alcohol and common
Particular.
thank you, license for Patron Westwood LLC, doing business as Casa Loca Restaurant, and approve Frank Santos Jr. as the manager of record, pending the following: final sign-offs by the Building, Fire, and Health Departments, management supplying licensing agent with safe alcohol service certification cards, such as tips, for all staff that will sell, serve, and handle alcohol. And finally, a ABCC approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So you're good to go from us. Just continue to work with staff, and we look forward to seeing the lights on and cars in the parking lot come late April, or whenever it is in April you can open.
And I would like to personally thank you for the preview of the menu.
It's delicious.
That's great.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Nora, quick question for you. In terms of this license, where are we now on the available licenses?
Yes, so we have a total of 15 all-alcohol licenses permitted, and of those, we have 4 townwide licenses that are active, and 4 all University Avenue licenses that are active. So this would be the 5th in University Avenue.
It's 9 of,
So that would be 9 of the 15, so we would be down to 6 more that you would be holding aside, 4 townwide and 2 at University Station. In addition, we also have 2 wine and malt beverage licenses available at University Station. We've used all of the ones townwide.
okay. Well, I mean.
That's
in fact,
currently, if the board
we could
chose.
use those two elsewhere if we
You
wanted
could.
to, before
You
we would
could.
go to the state and ask for more if we were ever in that
Correct.
position.
And so when University Station was first permitted, the board made a commitment to hold those licenses for a period of time. I believe that period of time has probably expired at this point, but we're still keeping them categorized that way, so.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Okay, so next up, and I think I see people here who might be here for this, Schulte Catering Westwood LLC.
That would be us.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
So back, I think it was in December, we had a manager change of record, and we knew we would have something coming up to change the in-holders all alcohol and common vic license for Schulte Catering. And it came up in January to wait until now because we're going to have another manager change.
That's right.
So this is a public hearing like the last one was for the all alcohol common vic license, but we're also doing a manager change. So we have two elements that are here before us tonight.
That's right.
So I'll turn it back to you.
So,
Laura.
Can I just have clarification? If this is a new license that's being approved, do we need to do a manager change, or is it all going in as a new license
This-
with
yes.
Susan as the manager?
So Helen is the manager under the old license and will continue in that position until the new license is approved. And the new license is in Susan's name. Susan will become the manager of record
Okay.
of the new license.
Get that
But
right.
Helen is active on site today.
She
and
is.
Susan's
however,
there as
she-
well.
Susan's there as well. However, Helen did give notice, so she will not be active for very much longer.
Oh dear, okay. So you'll,
And
you
Susan
guys
is
will
moving to
figure that
Westwood
out.
on Friday.
Yes.
I'm moving right to the new condos right next door. So I will be,
You won't be able to get away.
I won't, I'm kind of after the last month going, oh.
Okay, well, you can be there for a while. I'm sure they'll have a good market if you need to
Yeah.
change places. So why don't you just give us a quick update on
Sure.
why we're
So,
doing this?
so the application has all been reviewed. Karen Flynn went through it. The Alcohol Review Committee reviewed it as well and recommended unanimously in favor of the new license. There was a question about Susan's residency, and she is moving to Massachusetts, but because she hasn't closed on the house yet, you're closing later
Friday.
this week. So she did give us a letter saying that in the event that sale didn't go through, she would still remain in Westwood, and she's actually living at the hotel in the meantime so that she can be on site.
Good.
So that was the only concern that we had. The hotel is not undergoing any other changes, so there's nothing for a hold on the license. Everything is ready to go. If this board approves it, the final documents will be submitted to the ABCC, and it's just a matter of waiting.
What is the
for
turnaround
final-
time from the ABCC?
4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so there will be a lapse of time where the current manager is not there? Given
Correct.
she gave notice? So what do we do during that period of
So
time?
that's not that unusual. A restaurant
Right.
or anyone holding a license is asked to notify us immediately upon the change of a manager, and then you approve an interim condition. The ABCC doesn't make a change until they get the paperwork, but you just get notice of the interim condition. So
Which would be
Susan will be the interim manager awaiting approval as the final manager.
Okay, we just want to make sure all the bases are covered. Any questions from the board?
Nope.
Pretty straightforward
Seems
then.
pretty standard. So I move that we approve the in-holders all alcohol common victualler license. I'm just going to call it.
Common vic.
How about a CV?
Come here.
License
Common
to
vic
Schultz
license.
Catering of Westwood LLC for use at Courtyard Boston Dedham/Westwood, and approve Susan Langford as the manager of record, pending submittal of proof of Massachusetts residency in the form of a Mass driver's license or equivalent to the licensing agent by February 28th, 2020, or any date at the board deems appropriate, and the final alcohol ABCC approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. So Susan, welcome to Westwood.
Yeah, good luck with the move.
Thank you.
Just know there's more to Westwood than University
I
Avenue.
grew up in Needham.
I love that
actually
you
grew up
work
5
there.
minutes from here.
Oh,
So,
good.
coming home.
I love that you work here and be a taxpayer. Beautiful.
All these Needham
Check all the
connections.
boxes. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
You're already doing it, but I hope you have a very successful career at the Courtyard.
And just to clarify, this won't change the number of licenses at all. The day that the new license is ready to be issued, approved by the ACC, they will surrender the old license and receive the new one. So
Okay.
it doesn't
Okay.
change anything.
Terrific. All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for coming in.
See you.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay,
If Karen
excellent.
needs anything else, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Bull Banks,
So
please come up
sorry.
to the
Sorry about
table. We have a lot of information on the Recreation Department. So you're back to give us an update on considerations for what we should be doing to increase our inventory of field space in town. And I think there are two areas that you'll be speaking to. One is the potential Thurston Middle School field lighting, and the other is a potential field construction on land previously owned by First Parish Church, which is contiguous to the high school property. So
Yes,
There you
thank
go.
you. Thanks for having me. I'm going to provide an update of what we've been working on for the past year. The last time I was here with this board, we had a proposal for the Thurston Middle School lights. We've been working with all of our community sport groups, working with the Recreation Commission, to talk about the field shortage that we have in town and what some of those needs are. So the options that we've looked at are expanding the options for nighttime play, as well as adding additional field space in town. Last year, we had gone through the process where the groups had identified what the needs are. They've been working together, trying to make things work with the schedules as we allocate the time of what we have. We've also been through an update of the open space and recreation plan, where we had a committee put together with recreation, school, youth sport group representation, and both of the projects that I'll be highlighting here tonight were identified as possible solutions for some of that field shortage space. So they're both good projects, and there's some pros and cons with both, so I just want to take you through the details of the projects, hopefully answer any questions you have, and get some feedback and suggestions on the next steps and where we might like to go with this process. So I'm going to start off with talking about just re-highlighting the Thurston lighting project and where we're at today with that. So we have worked with an engineering consultant to get a full look at what this project would look like. So for the Thurston field lights, we do have an updated cost estimate, which has come in at $750,000. Very similar to what we anticipated the costs for this project would be. This is working with the same light company that we currently have all of the athletic field lights at the school facility, so it would tie into the system. You can see on the diagram above, we have the two Thurston Middle School fields. This project would not change those grass fields. They would maintain their footprint, and both are able to accommodate full 11v11 size athletic participation. So we would accommodate the soccer field dimensions as well as lacrosse and field hockey, which have a smaller footprint.
So Nicole, can you just orient us to that though? So behind the wing of the Thurston, there's a field.
Yep.
And then if you walk straight in, there's two fields. So when I look at that,
Yes, so the one that's tucked behind the middle school building is sort of adjacent. On the other side, there is the Baptist Church is the
Right.
closest neighbor, and then the school building forms the other side of that. Right next to that is the other field, and that is sort of when you're in the baseball field, you can see that straight, and in fact, the outfield of the baseball field sort of runs directly into that grass area.
and so when you talk about lighting Thurston, would the baseball field be lit?
The baseball field would not be lit. That
This
is
is just
not
the
part
two
of what
fields.
this
Okay.
proposal looked at. So you can see on this diagram, and I believe we have it a little closer. I'll skip to this and then I'll go back for the rest of the points. The black dots are where the light poles would be positioned. We have reviewed and had this land surveyed to ensure that we are able to put the poles where they are. We have done test pits there to identify any rock or anything that would have to be dealt with. So that was all included in the project estimate in the proposal here. We've reviewed it with the school department as far as the placement, and also reviewed the pole placement for the safety from the sidelines. So we have all of that placement in place. You can see the top right-hand corner pole, which is identified as S6, comes in a little bit closer to the field. That is the pole that would be closest to the wetlands area. Its placement here has had preliminary review by the Conservation Commission, and it is outside of the wetlands buffer. We do move it a little closer into the field, but there is an existing fence there, so the pole would be behind the fence. There wouldn't be any safety issues or anything like that. So you can see the placement, and this would include 8 poles lighting 2 fields. So going back here, along with these 2 fields, we did have some conversations of being able to alternate and do some field resting. So that could look like using one field on certain nights and the other field on certain nights. And we have also discussed a field development option, which would allow us to put more nighttime use onto these fields and place daytime use, especially Saturday gameplay, onto another field area. The First Parish land, which we're going to hear about next, is one of those field options, as well as we've been working with the school building committee to identify when the new school project goes in, if the field development there could be expanded to accommodate a full-size 11v11 field. It would give us an additional, most likely grass field at that site as well. So again, giving some opportunities there to, through scheduling, alternate the use of it and protect the grass turf. The 800 hours of additional evening availability is looking at the full scope of what you could get for each of those fields. I don't think we'd anticipate they'd be in use probably from the 9 to 10 p.m. time frame, but that just gives you an idea of how many hours of nighttime use could be accommodated there.
It'd be great to see a schedule of how you came up with the 800, because off the
So
top
the
of my head, I wouldn't
800,
know that hour if you lost it, what it would go down to.
Exactly. So what we're looking at there is from dusk until 10 p.m. And 10 p.m. was selected because that's when our field light policy, that's the off time for that. So I utilized the full amount of time.
Yeah.
I'd
just like to know the
there are a lot of
sensitivity to
times
different
when we do
assumptions.
have both turf fields at the high school in play till 9:30, 10 o'clock. I think the unknown is if we added 2 additional lighted fields, would those be used to that capacity? Talking to soccer and lacrosse, who would be primary community group users, they prefer to end their play at around 9 o'clock, just because of the ages of their participants. I'm going to skip to the bottom bullet, which is requiring additional field maintenance. Both the Recreation Commission and the Select Board have brought up that with the grass turf, we would need to look at any additional budget amount that would need to be put in to care for the additional wear and tear on the field. The Department of Public Works has given us a preliminary amount of about $10,000 per year. If this is an option that we want to move forward with, they will put they will identify specifically what that dollar amount would be. And the Rec Commission has asked that they consider some sod pricing be included in that, so that we could have good repair, which typically would happen over the summer, which is for the most part the only season when this field gets rested and would be available for any maintenance. And the final item that I want to talk about here is the turf conversion potential. During this past year, in speaking with the groups and really highlighting the needs of soccer, which is one of our largest youth group users, they are very interested in seeing a potential for artificial turf. So when they reviewed this project, they were interested in the nighttime lighting capacity, but they had more interest in an artificial turf being available. So we did explore at this site the potential to add artificial turf in the future. The lights are designed in a way that it can accommodate artificial turf carpeting in the future, and there would be some additional site work that would need to be done, and so that would include things like bringing in some fill and quite possibly adding a retaining wall back along the woods line where the wetlands area begins. But with those accommodations, it could be done. The other item that we need to highlight here, which has been a concern, and our Rec Commission has considered this as well. You can see right through the middle of the field we have the gas line, sort of the diagonal going across both fields. The gas company has stated that we would be able to place artificial turf over that gas line. However, their easement would need to remain in place, and if they did need to get there, that it would be at the town's risk to repair and replace that carpet. So that's certainly something that needs to be discussed and taken a look at if that's something that the town would be interested in that type of a risk.
Does the easement cause any similar risk with how the lights get installed?
No, none of the lights would be placed where they would impede the actual line, and they would not impede any of the access to that, so. it
None
would
of
be-
the underground wiring?
Correct, right. So I believe they said they would go right under it, so the conduit would just go under it. Actually, that gas line is not that deep down, so the conduit would be put underneath the gas line, and so if they ever needed to get to it, it wouldn't interfere with the lighting and the wiring.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, may I ask you a question? So if they're, when you were talking about potentially putting the artificial turf, would the gas line and the electrical conduit, would they be between the two fields? The way it looks
Yes,
like right now,
the
it
plan
would be, right?
Yes, the electrical engineer reports are available, those have been run, and we did ask that that would go in between the two fields, that's
So if
correct.
they needed to get to it, we would have to
Yeah,
rip
so it's
up
a
the
little bit of
field.
extra conduit to run it that way, but that was our preference, so we asked for that to be accomplished that way. This report here means nothing to any of us, but basically it's the light spreads. So we have all of the light engineering reports,
Yep.
and what this is showing is that with this placement of the lights, we have lighting quality that would meet the standards for athletic play, both for high school as well as our community sport groups. So even with the shift of that one pole, we don't sacrifice really what the light quality here is. And we have all those reports continued. We have not gone through the process of any permitting or, talking about light permitting with the planning board. So that would be a next steps for this project.
So those numbers give us, like, the intensity of the light, is that what that is?
They do, yes. They give us the intensity. They tell us if it's adequate for athletic play, which it is. Okay, so that is, that's the Thurston project. Obviously, a little shift in the thinking as we kind of came through this project and took a look at what that field could do. And so one of the things last year when we decided to take a step back and get the full cost estimates, design this out, was that we also wanted to look at the first parish parcel located adjacent to the high school. And this land was purchased about 5 years ago. And one of the main reasons behind it was that it did have field development opportunities in the future. And we did talk to our sport groups and the school department about that, sort of long-term identified solution, having that extra land available to us. Okay. So the layout that you see here is the first scenario that we've run for the first parish land, and this is the multi-purpose field space. So you see in the bottom center a multi-purpose field. It is full dimensions for 11v11. It also includes 2 smaller playing fields, which go the width-wise to allow 2 9v9 playing fields. Again, can also accommodate lacrosse and field hockey. 2 other popular sports here.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, Nicole. So the 11v11 is,
Whole thing.
The whole long rectangle that you see sort of in the center bottom section.
Yep.
And then where you see the dotted lines, that's forming the edge of each of the 9v9 fields.
okay. What is the 11v11?
This whole box is
Oh, I get it. Okay,
And
so
then it
it's
can
the
be-
same
Same box.
structure.
Yeah, same
So you
box.
just be.
Yes, and
I got
you
it,
should
I got it.
have in your packet,
Just putting up
this
just
this
putting up the
drawing,
curtains between us.
C1.
Slow to this, slow to this.
Just putting up the curtains in between,
Yeah,
that's all.
shows you a little bit clearer, like what the actual field looks like. We do show the setback features here to all of the property lines that you have. However, that field could be expanded a bit further. You can do a field development into the setback area, but we wanted to get this layout to show that it can fit even if we don't do any extra into
I
the
see the
setback.
setback.
And then Nicole, what is the?
The setback is the dotted line around, the entire perimeter of
What's
that
the
sort
top,
of.
the top right smaller box? I just can't see the
So the
writing.
top right smaller box
Practice
is a practice
Oh,
field
okay.
area. So what we wanted to show out here is a separate option, and we did price this out separately as well. It's not quite the dimensions for a 7v7, but it's very similar to what we have next to the multi-purpose field at the high school, where you'd have a separate practice area either for the younger kids to do their practices on, or in between games you could have arrivals and warm-ups going on there while you had the game finishing.
And so the access road off of Manhattan Street is near that parking lot?
Yeah, where the parking lot
Yes,
is.
straight into the parking lot. So off of Manhattan, you'll see the parking area diagram.
Yeah.
We would get 83 parking spots in this space. This was a real positive when I showed this to the school department. They were very interested in additional parking at the high school. As you can imagine, if you know what the parking is like there, there's a significant shortage. So, you know, talking with the superintendent, she was interested in possibly doing bus parking over here during the day and allowing students to park and kind of get off of Manhattan and the neighborhood. This also with 83 spaces would give us plenty of space if both 9v9s were in use at the same time. You would have enough parking accommodation here for that. Additionally, we would connect the property. So you'll see here the white line highlights where we would extend the pathway, the walking path from the high school. And so you'd have both parking lots would be able to be utilized for you know, any events, and if you had multiple athletic events going on at one time, you'd have access to all of that parking. So you can kind of see there where Manhattan Street is and where you'd pull in, and the parking would be on both sides of that.
So the drive into the parking would be between the parking lot and the baseball field? Is that where the
So
drive into the parking?
drive-in kind of goes on both sides. They've done center parking as well. You know, this is a preliminary concept design, so we didn't
Yeah.
get into a lot of details here.
But can you point to where the drive would be off Manhattan?
Yep, so I should have a laser pointer or something.
Oh, you don't?
If you
Oh, I
go
thought-
back,
I don't think
if you
I
go
do.
back to your other
I don't
map.
think this is quite
That
that.
one's
I
hard.
was there. No, I wasn't
I
looking.
think it's
I
the
this one.
lower part, right
can do
into
it.
there,
Right
and then
here.
you would be able to go.
Right here
Yes.
and right here.
Okay, that would need to be discussed.
Yeah, and, I mean, there's a few things here. Sorry,
'Cause that's right next to the church parsonage.
Yeah, I mean, preliminary look on this, you know, talking about the exact access in, talking about the traffic flow. We haven't gotten into any of those design concepts yet. You know, for example, closer to the field where those 6 spots are located, you know, bringing those in and maybe having a drop-off location closer to the field. Things that we know for traffic flow families are going to be
Right.
looking for.
Yeah, this is preliminary. I
But this
get
is
that. I
preliminary
get that.
concept,
Yeah, this is not
absolutely.
this has
So-
not been vetted through a process yet, so
Right.
Madam Chair, if I can just add,
please.
also, that walking path, one of the things that Nicole and I did discuss is working with public safety to make sure they had access for emergency vehicles. So if there was something that happened at the field, the emergency vehicles would be able to provide access to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the other nice part about that is our DPW maintenance as well could use that to access for field maintenance, get equipment through there without having to go out onto Manhattan Street. So we would make sure that's a wide enough pathway for all of those things to happen.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so for the First Parish land,
Why don't you call it the former First Parish
former
land?
First Parish land, yeah. The land adjacent to the high school.
Yes.
We've priced out, again, you know, I want to just, I know there's a preliminary concept designs and our price estimates. We've been working with environmental partners who's helped us to price out what these options are. When we started this project, and based on our discussions last year, we had them price out for us a grass field with the access, clearing of the land, and the parking area. So I've offered here sort of an a la carte menu of what the different options are and the add-on pricing to add on those options based on some of the feedback that we've had if we were to try to light this parcel and if we were to try to go with artificial turf for this parcel. So your first, just over $1 million is for the grass field and the parking, the clearing and getting the actual use of this land. The turf upgrade, just about $600,000. The lights, $475,000. And then all of the design, management of the project and permitting at $250,000. So total project cost of $2.4 million. I have started preliminary conversations with the sport groups. I've met with soccer already to, give them a look at this. Again, their priority was really looking for artificial turf. And so, they feel like the lights, if that were something that could be planned for and accommodated so that maybe in the future that could be added, that would be okay, but to have artificial turf would be the most beneficial.
And is that so
to
they
what
can play
need.
in more
It gets
damp,
them
wet
in the
weather type
preseason.
things?
They can get onto the field much sooner, and then really any of the the
Fewer
rainouts,
cancellations,
fewer
hopefully.
cancellations, just the things that make their season and their scheduling so
Even turf
difficult
field
with
can be
that
tough
many.
in rain, but drainage has to be,
And needs to be replaced every 10 years.
and it needs
It's
to be
replaced
Right.
every 10 years.
So,
And
I
especially
do-
for younger kids,
Yeah,
turf
it's too fast.
is too fast, and the ball is out of bounds when it's in.
Yeah, it is a different play experience,
So
and
I respect that they want, the gold standard, but I'm just not sure it works for
Yeah,
every age group.
absolutely. And we did discuss that the town has 2 artificial turf fields that are able to be used and are able to get booked
And
by
are
the youth
used.
groups. What they'd be looking for here, I think, in difference from those 2 fields, is that those 2 fields are utilized to the maximum amount by the school department. And typically, the youth groups get onto those about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. So the discussion here was having one that was still going to be utilized by the school department, but when it wasn't as needed by the school, having that option available to get out there earlier, say 5 p.m., when coaches are home and available, but before it gets too late and everybody's getting into.
Well, I think it's too early, but I don't know what decides whether the schools have priority over this or not. I mean, I
Yeah.
know the high school is the high school. This seems to be,
Recreation.
yeah, an additional thing. But then again, people, if we want to go this route or decide down whenever to do it, we want broad support, so.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have the school committee weigh in. I know they would
Oh, yeah.
definitely be happy with the parking spots, since
Right.
I have a junior who did not get a parking spot this semester.
Yeah.
Where does she park?
She gets a ride
Front
from
of
a
your
friend,
house.
or you drive around until you find one. You do
And there's
not
a lot
have
of
a reserved
that.
spot,
And
yes.
the
Every day on
preliminary
Manhattan Street, it's
input-
packed in.
Yeah.
And in the maze, they complain
It
about.
really, I know, and the further you get on into the spring, it gets
Worse.
just terrible.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that would certainly be a benefit. It would, utilize the property. It's a great piece of property to have right next to your high school.
Right.
So the preliminary discussions with the athletic director of the school would absolutely utilize this, potential for a couple of games going on at one time, after school practices. But we haven't gotten into the conversation of, would that get prioritized or at least available earlier for the sport groups.
And as
we'd
with
have
everything,
to-
we're trying to satisfy a lot of needs. We don't want to
Absolutely.
not continue to work towards that.
Everybody is so used to working together on
Yeah.
these things. I have to
That's
say, I
good.
mean, with the field shortage, this spring, we are going to be down the Lodge Field. The groups do work together. They all sacrifice some so that they can be out there. It's all the same kids, so it's good to see that. And the school department, always works with them too. I mean, when they can get off earlier at 6, they get off, and the groups are right there waiting to get on. So everybody's doing those things. So the other conversation that I did open up a dialogue with soccer, at least, I haven't gotten into the other sport groups, is with the idea of if the town were going to consider taking on an additional artificial turf field, putting together some kind of a funding mechanism so that we could have a fund set aside for the carpet replacement. That would happen every 10, 12, 14
That's
years.
enough. No more than that.
Yeah, no
More than
further than
10.
that. So, you'd have this rotation of these 3 turf carpets that would have to be replaced, and having that fund set aside where there would be some dedicated money that would be, a user fee portion that was going to this. And they were open to having that discussion and exploring that. So I think that's something where, they're saying this is really what the need is. But they also heard last year when we had this discussion, at the town level, that was really a lot for the town to consider taking on.
And we already have some high capital items in that category.
Right.
So Chris, what do you want us to do tonight?
Well, Madam Chair, it would be helpful for us if we could get, if this is which concept the select board supports, and we would then continue to dive down into the greater details. So if it is the latter project, the land formerly known as First Parish, we would continue to work with the user groups, we continue to work with the schools, and I just want to say I think Nicole has done a great job working with the user groups, getting the conversation started, and getting a lot of people on board as far as the concept. I'm not going to say that anyone has signed off on this, but they have certainly supported the concept that is being presented. So if we could get some direction from the select board, if
So
this
you're
is something-
saying there's more weight behind the former First Parish land, the new land, the new field?
Town-
If
why
making
don't we
a
just call it the
choice.
town-owned land next to the
No,
high
it's
school?
making a choice. We could have, add on new field, and we'd still have the Thurston fields.
Yes.
Or if it's an either-or, we could light this, and that would be an expense that might delay, I don't know why, but, delay the new field.
So, yes.
Is that what you're-
So we can move forward with the board so inclined to go with the Thurston, lighting of the Thurston field.
Mm-hmm.
Or if, with this concept, which is more money, I'm not
Yeah,
going
but
to downplay
there's
that.
a lot of
But
benefit there.
there's a little more benefit
Yeah.
to the community with this project. There's still a lot of work to do as far as permitting, but I think that what Nicole and I are talking about, I believe the Park and Recreation Commission supported this concept over Thurston. If they had the benefit of choosing, they would certainly go with the land formerly known as First, because of those
Gentlemen?
benefits.
Michael, why don't you
Sure, my
start?
thought process is I'd like to have the school committee weigh in on, I know it's ultimately our decision, but I'd like to know what their thought process is on both of them.
I don't know why we would include them in recreation decisions.
Well,
So
it's-
this is the problem. Every year, for many years, we get bogged down in process. So last year, let me finish. Last year, there was all sorts of questions about the Thurston Field. Where would the lights go? Were we confident in the cost? We went round and round. So we deferred it. So now we have the answers on where the lights would go. We have an actual cost. And now we have a new idea. That's going to be years' worth of process to actually see field space get online. The lodge is offline, has been offline. I get that everybody got along, but it was a degradation of the quality of play for the entire town. So we can always do the First Parish land later, or we can kick off the process with no cost. We have an option in front of us to finally, after years and years and years and years and years, to get additional field space online. It's a bureaucratic nightmare.
Okay, so you would favor proceeding with the Thurston lights?
I don't think it's an and/or. I think it's Thurston Lights and begin the process of answering questions on the high school. I mean, if we're going to now involve the school committee, we're going to now have all sorts of process. You're not going to see this go online for years.
Yeah, and I can talk to Emily about the school committee. Preliminarily, she has seen both plans, and she doesn't have any concerns with either. So the facilities, Ken Aries was involved with the Thurston lighting. We talked about, where would the lights be in proximity to the
Right,
building,
you
the
had mentioned you
pathways,
had-
all of that. So I don't see that there would be any issues with either of these projects. Emily with the First Parish land did feel that the parking would be a great asset. Also, this land is far enough off of the school campus that it's really not going to impede. The construction can happen, and it's not anything that she has any concerns with the construction process.
So
So
my
I think
biggest-
we have the general buy-in from the school department to move forward with either of these concepts. I would say, right now with environmental partners, I was looking into two other options for the First Parish land. One was to move the baseball field there, and one was to look at the, what kind of an option could we get for an inside facility and what could fit on that. I will tell you, they've done a drawing of the baseball field. It really doesn't fit. You can see by the footprint of what the property outline is, it fits a multi-purpose field, but it's really not. It is 5 acres, but it's oddly shaped. So with the baseball field hardly fitting, you can see what an 11v11 field fits there. To go and price out what the building would be, you're not even going to fit a full-size 11v11 field
Okay,
inside
but that's
that
taking it
building.
to other
But
things.
n-
But
but
I
Nicole,
want to,
you know,
John, hold on a
I'm just asking a
second.
question.
No, hold on a second. Michael didn't get to finish his thought, okay? So we're digressing a little bit, but we will. But can you finish?
Yeah, sure.
your-
My plan is not to slow it down, John. In fact, I'm leaning in favor of the Thurston Lights. I just want to hear what the school committee has to say because, we're talking about the new school coming online soon. I just want to hear their thoughts on it because I'm hearing other thoughts about other stuff that we've already done and takes away from the schools, and I'd just like to hear them weigh in on it. Whatever their decision is, that's fine. I'd just like to hear them weigh in on it.
But let me ask you this, Nicole.
It's ultimately our decision, so.
But, I mean, realistically, with the First Parish land, how quickly could we have kids playing on land?
So Chris and I have talked a little bit about how we might move this forward. So if we don't look into those other options, those other two options for the First Parish land, and we use the funding that we have available for design and concepts, I think what we would want to do is go back to environmental partners and try to subset out probably a 2-phase process where we get some funding this year to start the full design, have it surveyed, do the test pits, get the full all the light engineer reports. If that's an option we want to move forward or not, we'd be ready to have that conversation, go through the permitting, get everything ready for bidding, get a full project ready this year. Funding to clear the land, possibly construct the parking lot, although I think we need to have that conversation with the engineers to see how far do we go on in that preparation, but that it really would look like a 2-year commitment to, obviously we would be planning that we would be moving the whole project forward, whether, and probably make that decision, is it going to be grass field or is it going to be artificial turf, and we're going to take this year to work with the sport groups and get everything in line for that.
So it's a couple of years if things went well.
And then the second year would be that field development.
I see an issue with that timing, that if let's just say we did design first and not partial site construction. We have to come back with the request for more capital, and we could collide with the school building project,
Yes.
which could, I think
Yep.
the school committee would say that would be undesirable. I'll let them speak for themselves, but anticipate them saying that would be undesirable
In that 2-year process, you are correct.
in the 2-year process, which I
Yep.
think we all need to think about, because that kind of defeats the objective here in terms of timing, as you highlight timing
Yeah,
being
I think
important.
timing is just a little bit not on our side.
Well, I knew from the beginning it was going to be at least a 2-year project.
Well, on
But,
that.
I mean.
But the lights aren't.
The reason I bring up the school committee, John, is because when we first started saying it, we called it the Thurston Lighting, and they were upset with that. So then we went to the rec department lighting the Thurston Fields. So I'm sure you're kind of sensitive to that, at least I am.
No, I get it. I mean, I think what's just interesting to me is I think that there's different perspectives. So what you hear from the leaders of the youth groups and what parents of young children are often talking about seem a little bit of a conflict. And I just, again, I feel like we have been in a deficit for years. When's the last time we put a new field online?
Westwood Lodge.
Westwood Lodge.
Westwood Lodge,
Yeah.
which was how many
Right,
years
Pat?
ago?
Westwood Lodge?
3.
No.
No, it's longer than that.
Well, it was off.
Longer
It
than
was
that.
off for a while.
Yeah, but
Longer
we
than
had
that.
it for a number
So
of years
Back on.
during that period of time, we've seen lacrosse go
I thought
through
it
the
was
roof,
probably in-
Yep.
right? We've seen
Numbers across the board, and there's
No,
new
I mean,
sports looking
it
for
went
space.
offline for years.
Right.
And then we brought it back on 3 years ago.
Right.
But the numbers and the demand have gone up, and the capacity
There
is
is
down.
no denying that a field shortage exists, and we make do with really sharing all of these assets. We have really a very good relationship with the school department. Everybody shares very well, but we know there's not enough. I sit through the fields meetings
And
every
even when you do
year.
this, there's still never enough.
No,
There's-
right, but
Yeah.
I think there's,
Capacity.
I think people do try, I agree with you, but for a town of our caliber, we don't meet the demand.
Okay.
And you're right, I don't think there'll always be more demand than capacity, but as the data shows, the number of users has gone up, the requests have gone up, and the field space is actually
Data?
down.
What data? From the,
The youth groups, the number of.
I don't know.
I'll get it.
I remember when my kids were around, or younger, playing, that was the same problem.
Well, Madam Chairman, I can remember when we built those those fields behind the
And the one
first
behind the
one,
high school.
and we had to take 200 trees down. And I can remember going to a meeting and having someone confront me about taking 200 trees down for 2 soccer fields.
And you said,
And that's what we'll get at First
I
Parish.
said you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet, and they were not happy with that response. But
yeah, right, but we own the land, so we can.
Yeah.
Chris,
So-
what do you
so-
think? What do you want to tell us at this point?
Well, I think we have two good options, but I think the board has highlighted true concerns, community concerns, and also as from a promptness as far as getting a field online.
Right.
We will take the direction of the select board. If you would like us to go forward with the lighting of the Thurston Field, we can certainly continue and go in that direction. If you would like us to do that and possibly do a little more research on the land formerly known as First Parish, we can certainly do that. But we would like to go with the funding that we have in place to do one of those two. We can't do both with the funding that we have. The funding that we have, we can do the lighting.
And that being the 750,
Yes.
the request.
The request that we have, yes. We can, so we have the request in there to do the lighting. If the board wanted us to pursue the other property, we would then ask for a portion of that to do have the project manager on board, have the design, have the permitting.
How would
and
you
then
get the
in.
lights done if you used a portion of the
You
750?
wouldn't, you wouldn't do that. So
Okay,
you're doing
okay,
one
it's
of the
not-
two, I'm sorry, to be clear.
Okay,
The-
how much do we need for the design of the, or further study of the First Parish land?
First Parish land, it's shown up there as 250.
That's all in, that's the big.
That's the project in the design, yes.
No, I'm talking about just to
Oh,
design.
250. Oh, yeah.
Just to design. Where I'm going with this.
Just to design?
Where I'm
It would
going
be
with
less than
this
the
is,
250 then, yes.
the three of us could say, do this, but it doesn't mean we can do that because it has to go through the town meeting process.
Yes, it does.
To get approval. My suggestion would be, and I'll be interested to see how my colleagues react to this,
Okay.
that we do the 750 discussion with the Finance Commission, and I think we are in a position where we have tremendous increase in information to share. You know, the study, which is one of the reasons to do the design first, the process you've gone through, Nicole, with many people, and pursue it. See if we can get approval, but also get design money for the First
Right.
Parish where it's not an either or.
Building
Because
it-
I think-
Just build it into the cost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's for two things. It's a small piece. If it's, what did we do last year to do the lights? What was the design?
20.
25?
Tw-
25, whatever it ended up
Yeah.
being. I think it's probably more, but let's just say this is a false number, but 50,000. Again, it goes along it's not an either-or discussion. We are serious about needing to improve the inventory and timing of users. I think a big thing that's changed from last year on Thurston is that it isn't to use this field 24/7. Nobody could. But it's not to use it all the time, but it's to give it evening play. We'd have to, I think it's one thing to say DPW 10,000 a year. I don't know what their personnel issues would be to maintain that field if they have the staff to do it. I don't know. That question's been asked. But it would give us, to me, it sounds like more flexibility in use, in scheduling, but that doesn't give us the greater inventory. That's where First Parish, former First Parish land comes in. And that is probably not a 2-year project from now, but it's probably more like a 3 or a 4, just because we can't collide with the
Yeah,
school
probably a
building
4,
project.
yeah. More like a 4.
So we would start the planning for that down the road. Now, we have to have people get out and speak in favor of the Thurston Lights and explain why this is a good move. I think that's, the town has to decide. We don't decide, but that's my suggestion tonight. So I put it on the table.
And Nicole, do you think the user groups would support the lights? I mean, I don't,
I think the user groups think that would get them some relief. But to speak to Nancy's point, I think there has to be a larger scope of that plan. The concerns with the Thurston are the wear and tear on the grass turf. So a future proposal for another field would give some relief there. And the second option is the artificial turf. I do think the user groups will want to have the discussion of would the town consider future addition of artificial turf if those fields are lit. And so the
I don't
risk
think
would
we
be
need to.
there. But
I
no.
don't think we need to consider that. I think we continue to talk about the new school building project. If it is approved, that it have the turf field and it all be done as right from the start, and we consider whether the former First Parish land, is appropriate for that. I mean, we can, if turf might have its place, not with the little kids who would have the ball off the field all the time. So that has to be thought of. How does this provide field inventory for appropriate user groups? It's not just add it and then everybody can use it. It's add it here and this group of teens doing the multiple sports could do it.
So, I mean, playing into the whole elementary school thing, I mean, we still don't have a plan yet, but if they end up knocking down the old Hanlon, then we may be able to expand that to include another field where the school is.
Right, that's
So
the
there's a whole
discussion.
host of different moving parts that are
That is the
still out there.
discussion in terms of either location, various proposals that will start narrowing soon. But it is part of the
Yeah,
discussion.
and that's
It
what
is
makes
part
it
of the
hard to say,
discussion.
you know, how much do we spend to design this one if we're going
And
to
we
end up
don't have
putting it over
infinite
there?
resources. We have to be thoughtful with the funds. And I think it would be helpful to have a discussion with Pam in terms of funding that. I don't think we know yet the timing if a new field is built next to the high school, what the options are to fund that, because we don't want it to be an either or to a school building project. This is to enhance the resources available to a community who truly wants
I
to
love sports. I know.
to be out there playing, having the kids doing it. It's all good. It's not a bad thing. So I don't like it when things start competing with good choices.
And we don't
Oh,
want to
and it
hinder
gets-
any of that.
Gets them
yeah.
away from Netflix, it gets them away from everything, so, you
Right.
know.
Right. So
This is what we want.
If I could just say, Madam
Yes,
Chair,
please.
The presentation tonight is not to conflict with the school project in any way,
Right,
shape, or
I
form.
understand.
But to
I
answer
agree.
the question was how fast could we get
Yeah.
that field online at the site formerly known as First Parish? And it is roughly a 24-month process. But again, Nicole's not saying it, I'm not saying that, and clearly the board's not saying that we want to put this up against a school project, because that's
Right.
not the case.
I'm just keep saying because I want people out there in the school committee to know, because that will be their first concern if you went and spoke
And I just
to
want to
them.
make sure they understand that that's not what we're trying to say either.
Good. Then we're all in agreement, and that's a
Madam-
good thing.
Can I just ask a question? How long does it take to install the lights at Thurston?
I think it would be a summer installation. We would want to do that as soon as the school closes down. So we would take that summer season and do it. We would, if we had the equipment ordered and purchased July 1st, I think it was 8 weeks lead time on the equipment.
So you could
We'd
get
start
those lights up before
installation.
school starts?
I think you have to talk
Absolutely
to
doable.
the...
You
have to go through the procurement
You have to go
process.
through the procurement process. I think you need to check and see what you can do before the
Right.
funding's available. If approved at town meeting,
Yep.
it's available July 1, but there's certainly lead-up time.
If we can place the order earlier, it puts us in a better position. That's always the
Yeah,
the
that
tight
again is a
timeline there
discussion.
with the funding.
Pam,
Yep,
Karen.
we can talk to
um,
Michelle and Pam
Michelle,
about that.
excuse
Yeah.
me. Does that give you, are we in agreement to ask them to go forward that way? Are we okay
Yeah,
with,
so you're saying do the lights and try to and get a little money for
get
the...
design money
get
for
design money.
the additional new field?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
And ask other questions of procurement and Pam for potential funding down the road, just so we're prepared to answer questions
Sure.
that we have, that
Yeah, I
others
don't,
may
because
have.
I don't want it to be an either or. I think we do the immediate project, but keep this other one alive, recognizing it has...
I think we have a lot of people who will weigh in,
Competition.
yeah.
And as I said, I just want the school committee to weigh in, and maybe people who are really in favor of this, go to the school committee meeting and express their
Well,
opinions
and
there as well.
the school committee didn't want us to buy the land. They didn't support us buying the land, but it was bought because it could be an asset to the schools to have. And now look, the idea of
We convinced
parking.
them in the end, Madam Chairman.
What?
I think
I
you
think we
convinced them,
convinced them in
yeah.
the end.
It was
No, they
it was
never
a unanimous
voted in-
vote from the
They-
school committee.
No, it was a 3-to-1 vote in favor of it at the end.
They didn't, yeah, I don't remember it quite that way.
3-to-1, yes.
But,
Took some convincing.
It did.
yeah, and so let's try to move this as a positive thing.
Yeah, right.
Get more information, but, here we are, it's early February, we're back before Finance Commission, public hearing later in the month, and again in March. If it's going to get approval, it needs to go through this process now. And I encourage my colleagues to be at those meetings to speak to it with the Finance Commission.
We have everything lined up right now to begin the permitting process, to take a look at all the light engineer reports and everything, so that, we can move forward with that contract and get it going.
We'll work with Michelle on
Yep.
putting the bids together.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you,
Nicole, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Select Board.
Okay, yes, thank you for the work that's been done, and the work to be done. So it's good. Okay, Nora, I think we're going to need you. So why don't you come make yourself comfortable? Next up on the agenda is a discussion to review annual town meeting warrant articles, and specifically to spend some time talking about the potential for the select board to take a miscellaneous article and use it to address the Morrison Park and Field, and another, a switch of endorsement potentially of one of the planning board articles, which they indicated at this point they don't have the time necessary to address what was proposed, and so we have a discussion to have on that and see if we want to take it on, but maybe in an amended, a reduced version of what's being requested. So that's the lead up. We have in our meeting materials first potential language change. Town Council, you've given us something regarding the
Yeah.
overnight parking restriction.
Yeah, and it came directly from the first meeting with the FinCom. They were looking for more specific language through and including, and
Oh, the dates.
then
Yep.
you at the meeting beforehand asked about and/or, so and/or ice treatment. So
Okay.
we've included that.
Can I follow up on another question raised about the use of the word illegal?
Yes.
That is already in the language of the article?
I didn't look at that, but it's, people get hung up, I think, on what means illegal. It's a citation situation. You're going to get a ticket. It's illegal to park in front of a fire hydrant. It's illegal to let the meter.
Park in a handicap parking spot.
Correct. So, but what's the penalty is the question. It's not a felony, it's a traffic citation.
Okay, so
Okay.
you're okay with leaving it
I
as
am
is?
okay with leaving it as illegal.
Okay, so any questions on the proposed change in language for that article?
No.
Okay, so
Unless
we
you want to
have,
say unlawful, but
I don't.
It does say unlawful.
as what, as a,
It shall be unlawful for an owner or operator of any vehicle other than one action related to the park said vehicle on any public street.
so amend it
Where
to
does it say
say
that?
unlawful instead
If
of
you want to
illegal.
change it to unlawful, that's
Yeah,
fine
I think
too.
that just
original
makes it-
language?
That makes it consistent with the original.
Oh, I thought, okay, I was looking at this as being the original language, it's not?
No.
We can change it to unlawful.
Okay.
Okay, John?
The only, yeah, no, I'm fine. The only question, the short-term rental material is in our packet. That's
Oh,
going
don't,
forward.
okay,
right?
no, hold on.
Okay.
We're,
It shall be unlawful.
okay, so let's go back, let's keep it as the original
Fair
language.
enough.
Good.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Okay,
I actually read it. I hate to admit that.
All
I
right.
actually read it.
and now, John, to what you were saying, the planning board is pursuing an
short-term
article
rental.
regarding the short-term rental. We'll talk tonight about a possible alternative to handling of Morrison Park. They're going to continue with the prohibitive zoning,
Yes,
and they're going to continue with the firearms.
yes.
And they have voted, the planning board voted last week before the Finance Commission meeting to no longer support the medical use articles. So why don't we take up,
Madam Chair, can we do the proposed language first, since there is a motion right after that?
I'm sorry, I jumped around.
that's okay. Let's go back to that. Okay, yes, the overnight parking?
Yes.
Sure.
So we're going to, we are going to accept the Select Board overnight parking restrictions change of hours language revisions as suggested, including changing the word illegal to unlawful.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, and
Okay, sorry
thank you,
about
Town
that.
Council, for your work on that. Okay, Morrison Park, let's talk about that. And when we were at Finance Commission meeting last week, Mr. Walsh suggested there is a Chapter 97.
Article 97.
Article 97, thank you, provision that could allow the recreation use of a property to protect it as that use, and the only way to get it out of that protection is town meeting, 2/3 vote, and then both bodies of the state legislature with 2/3 votes, and other hurdles.
Some other hurdles, and it's under the care, custody, and control of the Recreation Commission, so you'd also need a unanimous vote of the Recreation Commission.
In place at the time.
In place at the time, 2/3 vote of town meeting, 2/3 vote of both houses of legislature, and then there's some other requirements of filing with the, filing a MEPA application with the EEOC, and there's one other one I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's really...
It's an extensive list.
Yes.
So the issue we have here is there's a desire to protect that field as a recreation field.
Correct.
Today, it's a baseball field. 50 years from now, who knows what it might be, but the idea is to protect it as recreation. And the planning board has approached it as, let's do a warrant article that takes out the overlay district and just keeps it at its underlying zoning, which is local business
Local
B.
business B.
Yep.
And which still allows for development, but the local business B doesn't have the same provisions that the overlay district has, which would also allow housing and also allow comprehensive development, but is subject to a special permit.
Correct.
So there's the overlay and then the underlying, and the underlying has as of right development,
Does, for commercial purposes.
and it doesn't stop a select board 50 years from now from saying it should be developed now because, I don't know, recreation use has changed. I can't imagine a scenario, but let's have it developed and put it out there for sale, and it would have to go to town meeting before anything could be done. So it doesn't stop it from being potentially developed. It's just trying to send a message that we really want to preserve it. So we need to talk about, is this Article 97 a viable alternative to protect it as a recreation use, knowing that the hurdles to change that are significant, really significant. It's like,
If you think about it, the one time since I've been on the board, maybe there was a couple times early on, but we had acquired the Lowell property and the Stryer lands that basically form the woods here in Westwood, and it's off 128. There was a federal grant available to us for $500,000 if we put that land in conservation, which is an Article 97 application. We called a special town meeting
I remember it
to
well.
do that. It was a December town meeting. So we've done it before, but not for a recreation facility. I have some concerns, and if you look at the language I've preliminarily proposed, I want to take the DPW garage out of there so that we can fix it, expand it, or shorten it, or do whatever we want to it. I want to take the snack shack out of there so that that can, and Nora pointed out there's plans to build a bigger one at some point in time. So we may have to bring in someone to survey to make sure we mark those places out.
I think the Article 97 allows you to put buildings on it that only serve to
Support.
enhance and
Right,
support
right.
the use of the recreation
So
facility.
I have a-
bathrooms are okay, snack shacks, those are okay.
Stands.
Yes, I believe those are okay.
Well, I've got to call into DCR to make sure,
Yes.
and I've asked Nicole on her listserv with other rec directors to see if they've encountered it and make sure, because when the backstop starts to break down, you get about 20 years out of a backstop. We're going to need to replace the backstop
Yeah,
more.
I believe that it's all part of the Article 97.
That-
I can do a little
or-
bit more research on it, but
or
that's my
the
understanding.
hypothetical, what if baseball is no longer played in Westwood and it's another sport?
A different
An
recreation.
unimaginable set of circumstances, but 20 years ago, we didn't know.
Baseball no
I
longer
was going to say
I know.
blasphemy to the Lockgrain family.
I know, but look at what's happening to football in terms of participants and concern with concussion. I mean, it's just not what we thought 20 years ago we would be talking about. So I'm
I
I'm
understand.
imagining the unimaginable,
But
but if
it's-
we needed to change
It's
it.
any recreation, it
That's,
just can't be
so I want to
developed,
be
yes.
sure that we could go in
Yeah, I
and
mean, it could be a baseball
reconstruct
field, a
the
football
site.
field,
Yeah,
in
okay.
years to come, it could be
So that's what
20
you're looking
pickleballs,
into?
you know, courts.
You don't have an
you know.
answer for us yet?
I don't, but I
Should we,
think we should move forward with
I
it till
think we
we,
should.
till we get the answer.
Yes.
okay.
Because you can
I
always
don't
pull
have
an
a problem with that.
article.
Those are just, the questions I have.
Obviously, the planning board who brought it forward are listening to the residents and they're concerned. They're concerned of development coming in, and ultimately, we'd be saying, we support you and we're going to preserve this long after we're gone.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And, I agree with what you've just said. so,
I don't think, I disagree with Mrs. Hyde. I don't think baseball will ever be gone, but
I
that's...
was hypothetical. I don't think it will be gone either. But I'm just,
It's
to
the
make a
notion of
point.
I
cypre.
get it, Nancy.
What-
I'm just
Yeah.
teasing.
No, but I'm not going to the bank on that one. I'm not making a prognostication.
The Article 97
I just want to
proposal
know we can.
is what you would want to do if you truly wanted to forever preserve it as recreational
Right.
use. The zone change, it just doesn't accomplish that.
Correct.
There's nothing wrong with the zone change, but it doesn't preserve it in
Somebody else could
perpetuity.
come in and change it 20 years from now, so...
Correct.
Right, and message received that that's the desire, and
And if you didn't want to face the town by selling it to develop it, you could lease it for a period of years to develop it.
Right.
And you wouldn't have to go before town meeting.
right.
And this
Are you
would stop
sure?
that. This would prevent that as well.
It would.
Yep. That's why...
And nobody
brought it
has a
up.
plan to change
No.
its current use. That's why I start out, in
It's
the
a gem.
spirit of this, people are in agreement that this is the use we want and the way, for recreation purposes, it is a gem. And it's served the town well for a number of years. We want it to continue to. So do we have an article, a language proposal or anything yet, Pat?
Not yet.
Or do we just want to?
Well, I have a cursory one that I put in, but it needs work.
So why don't we just take the, an action to
Continue to pursue
turn
the
one
language.
of the miscellaneous articles into an adoption of Article 97 for the Morrison Field,
For a portion of the Morrison
excluding,
Park.
excluding land associated or property associated with
Right.
the DPW
See, I
garage.
worry about the DPW garage because the DPW garage not only services Morrison, it services other things within the town.
As does the parking lot.
Right.
But I think that, I'm pretty sure, and I have somebody I can call and find out, but I'm pretty sure
Why don't you coordinate with
that
Pat?
as long as it's an enhancement of the field itself. And I think the argument can be made for the DPW. We're not building apartments in the DPW building, so I think...
Not that I know of.
Okay, we'll stop there. Why don't you
Okay.
make some kind of motion so we can?
I move that we take one of our
Reserved article.
reserved articles to pursue Section 97 article for the Morrison Park Field with the advice of council as to how big the parcel will be ultimately put
Okay.
forth.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, so we'll add that, and we should notify the Finance Commission's administrator,
Yes, we will.
along with, if we do, the next one. So,
Can I just point out, sorry, before
ahead.
you move off that, there's also the antenna, which is on that field, and you'd probably want to carve that out as well, because that's clearly not a recreational use.
Is that on the Morrison or?
It's on the Morrison.
That was on the MBTA.
Well, there's.
Right of way.
There, no, it isn't. So there's a, on the other side of the
As did
MBT
I.
right of way, there's a
The,
commercial one. No, the antenna
North-
is on Morrison Park. It's
Right.
on that
Okay.
field property, as is the structure.
All the
that-
more reason we need a
supports it.
surveyor to describe
Okay.
exactly what the property we're going to take is.
Okay.
Yeah, because that back where the Roach Brothers lot goes into
Yeah.
the field is very ambiguous.
Okay.
we do have material of the other articles the planning board's doing, but we're not going to discuss
Oh,
the
okay,
ones
fine.
there. But we are going to talk about one of them, that's the medical use. So the issue is, we haven't officially been asked, I think, to remove that article, even though we know the planning board has voted to remove it. I haven't seen anything
Abby
come our
McCabe
way.
has sent a memo to,
Okay, so the
Chris.
official ask has come in. I'll
Yes.
assume it, then that,
Yes.
you're an extension of us. So, and before we do that, I think we should have a discussion about taking the article and scaling it down, I believe, is what you would like to discuss. So why don't you
Yeah.
just talk to that a little bit, Nora?
So just
A little bit.
Yes, very brief. The article originated in 2017. It was a proposal. We have a zoning bylaw that has one medical use in the use table of uses, the use chart, which is the part of the zoning bylaw that takes a particular use. I don't know, just for an example, a grocery store, and says you can have a grocery store in the local business A, local business B, highway business, but you can't have it in a residential zone. You can't have it in an industrial zone. So the use chart says all sorts of uses, and it says where they belong. For medical uses, when the bylaw was put together in the 40s, I believe, and amended over time, the only medical use that made it into that use chart was office of a doctor or dentist, not a resident on the premises. Just that title alone is confusing. Just a question came up today, not a resident on the premises. Are you talking about a medical resident? I don't think so. I think the title meant not someone who lives in a home. So you could have a doctor's office in your own home as a home occupation, something separate, but this one use chart use says you can have an office of a doctor or dentist, not a resident on the premises, in any commercial district, or by right, or by special permit in the general residence district. In 2013, the bylaw had some amendments for the University Station project, and that project included two definitions, one for office of a healthcare professional and another for a medical center or clinic, two uses that were specifically allowed in University Station. Well, they defined those uses and added them to the definition section, but they were never added to the use chart. And that's where we realized in 2017 we had a bit of a problem, because now we had these two uses that were defined but not in the use chart, so it was not clear where they're allowed, where they're not. Our building commissioner's opinion is they're not allowed anywhere except for in University Station because they're not in the use chart anywhere else. But we've had questions from business owners who were interested in coming outside of University Station with a medical use that was closer to a clinic than just an office of a doctor or a dentist. So we put forth a proposal to clarify that. And in doing that, in the proposal in 2017, we also tried to reach into two other uses that were not specifically mentioned, hospitals and substance rehabilitation and treatment facilities. And we proposed all four of those definitions: office of a healthcare professional, medical center or clinic, hospital, and substance rehabilitation treatment facility. We proposed clearly defining all of them and putting them all in the use chart with clear areas where they were allowed, where they weren't. That article was supported by the Planning Board, by the Finance and Warrant Commission, went to town meeting, it was approved, went to the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General's office noted a defect in the notice. And they gave us a process to cure that defect. It was unintentional. There was one of the zoning amendment hearings by the Planning Board had to be continued, and at a meeting before the FinCom, members left, and there was no longer a quorum to continue the meeting, to continue the hearing to the next date. So although it had been announced it was going to be continued to that date, there were not sufficient members to vote for it. The Attorney General's office gave us a procedure to follow to cure that, where we just had to advertise it. Lo and behold, a resident raised an objection to that, and the way the regulations are written, Attorney General's office had no choice but to disapprove it. So the Planning Board said, well, we'll bring it back. By the time we had notice of that, we were looking at the fall 2018 meeting, which never happened. So the idea was for the Planning Board to take it forward in spring of 2019. They began to do so. They discussed the article. They unanimously supported the article, asked for it to be placed on the warrant, brought it to their public hearing, and at their public hearing, they received some comments from residents who were not interested in going forward with the article due to a concern about a particular section where the hospitals and substance rehabilitation treatment facilities would have been allowed by special permit. So the Planning Board said, well, we're not ready to discuss this, and so we'll pull it back and wait until next year, and we'll spend the next year working on it. They pulled it back. That they didn't spend the next year working on it. An article was finally brought forward and discussed at the Planning Board September 21st meeting. The board members said they would take it under consideration and discuss it with the FinCom come the 28th. They had a meeting right before the meeting with the FinCom, and they voted 3-2 not to go forward with that article at that time.
You said September, you meant January?
I'm sorry, January.
Yep,
I'm sorry,
okay.
January
Yep.
28th. So they decided not to go forward with it at that time, that they thought they needed more time to study it. So we They made their wishes known to the Finance and Warrant Commission on the 28th, and I told the Finance and Warrant Commission that I was interested in asking the Select Board if this board would consider sponsoring the article rather than eliminating it entirely. And the reason I'm making that request is because the original concern about the article that gave rise to even considering the article in 2017 were these two definitions of Office of a Healthcare Professional and Medical Center and Clinic that are in our bylaw but not in the use chart. And that's where I think we have a serious hole that needs to be filled. So what I would propose is that this board consider taking sponsorship of the article and then limiting the article to simply adding those two definitions, those two titles that are defined in the article to the use chart and saying where they're permitted and where they're not. And what I would recommend is that you take the Office of a Healthcare Professional and replace the Office of a Doctor or a Dentist, not a resident on the premises, and have the Office of a Healthcare Professional allowable everywhere that priorly described use was allowed, so in all of the commercial districts and by special permit in general residence district. And then I would ask that you put medical center and clinic into the use chart and only allow it in University Station, which is the only place we believe it's allowed now anyhow, the only place that our
Just
building
makes it
commissioner
certain.
is allowing it right now. So it really doesn't change the way the bylaw is enforced. It simply makes it clear and avoids any inconsistencies. It gives clarity and dependability to businesses that are looking to produce.
And we wouldn't take up the hospital and substance abuse locations. Where should they be? Where shouldn't they be? Because right
Right.
now, they could be anywhere.
So what I'm suggesting is that you allow the planning board to take the additional time it needs to look at
look at the
those
rest.
uses and where they would place them and come back at a future town meeting. But at least close the hole that we have now to clarify the problem with the bylaw that we've seen for several years now. And let's just fix that.
And then have
Give the
time to
planning
do the
board
other.
time to look into the rest of it.
May I?
You may.
Thank you. So Nora, the way you're asking us to amend it, right? Have you asked the planning board to consider amending it that way?
I
'Cause
did-
I think the big thing for them is the substance abuse.
Yes.
Is what my intake would be.
So when they looked at this.
Watching the meeting.
When they looked at this a year ago, in February of 2019, that's exactly what I suggested. When there were residents who raised a concern, and they were very concerned about one of the administrative research office districts that had been proposed
On
as a
East-
site.
on East Street,
On
yeah.
East Street. I said, well, the real essence of this article, the part that we're very concerned about, where we find that we have a flaw now because we have terms defined that aren't in the use chart, were just those two terms. And I did ask them at that time, and they weren't interested in doing it then. They felt that they needed to take the whole issue up together, and they committed to spending the time to do it. But
And they didn't.
there was other work to be done. This year has been spent, the majority of it, working on first the open space and recreational plan, then the housing protection plan, now the comprehensive plan. So there's been a lot of work being done. They're very busy. They didn't get to this article. But that doesn't make the need any less, the fact that it hasn't gotten done. And another year has gone by. And whether another 6 months or another year will go by to the next meeting for the planning board to take this up, I think that's too long to wait. I think it's important that we address the need that we've had since we first became a serious need in 2017.
I guess what I'm just asking is, I mean, I know you're coming to us and say, okay, they want other things, but as far as the way you're asking us to present it, I'm wondering if it was presented to them that way, if they would still continue to sponsor it as the planning board.
I don't know. They could certainly consider that at their next meeting. But I would ask this board to take the sponsorship, and if the planning board wanted to join with you, if they decide that they are interested in going forward that way. They were not interested in doing that a year ago when that was requested of them. I don't know what their thinking on that is now. This article was discussed repeatedly as something that needed to be done, and board members talked about getting to it. And one board member in particular said that he would work on it, but it just never happened, and there was no presentation made to the board for how to address this. Finally, one of the planning board members did make a presentation on the 21st, but the other members did not all support that recommendation.
I mean, I think what's hard is, and I've watched the planning board meetings, I think it's hard to pit one board against another, even though I hear everything that you're saying, and I
We're-
laughed.
and we're not
hold on,
trying to do
no,
that,
No, and I
just so
laughed
you know.
because when I did watch the video, they said put it in local area, local zoning B or whatever it is, which is where my office is located. But,
Yeah. Well, that issue needs to be vetted. I don't look at this as pitting us against them. They have said time is an issue, and Nora is coming to us to
No, I
say, are you
understand.
willing
I
to take
understand.
this piece, this
Fortunately.
And
narrow
it's-
piece forward?
I think it's important to understand that a zoning article can come from virtually anywhere. The only,
And it has. in the past,
right,
yeah.
and the only legal requirement is they hold a public hearing and make a recommendation
Right.
Exactly.
to town meeting floor.
And we would hope they would support this.
We would
And-
hope, yep.
And at the time of their considering it at the public hearing, or even at their meeting that they have in advance of that public hearing, they could certainly return a request to be put back on as a sponsor of this article. But what I think is important is that we have a planning board that's clearly split, and we have an article that is in need of going forward one way or the other, to get to town meeting and let the voters decide.
But-
I think that this board could,
No, I guess where I'm concerned though, so you're saying we're not going to go forward with a definition of where substance abuse treatment facilities could be located?
Not at
I'm,
this time.
not at this time. I think the planning board needs more time to consider that, and I think this board should allow them more time to consider that and bring that back at a future time. But I also think it's important that we not lose sight of the importance of the original
No, I get it.
intent of the article.
I guess my theme tonight is timing. I just worry that that's out there.
Well, it is. But that's one thing that didn't happen that I believe was a takeaway from last year's discussion when the article was withdrawn, is a process to determine what locations make sense.
Right.
And we're out of time for that. I mean, there really isn't a,
So I'm fine sponsoring it. I'll defer to you and Pat. I think you're both expert in this. The article then that we would sponsor is solely related to the use chart?
So I have copies of it. I
Oh,
think you have
okay.
them in your pocket, but I can
I just
hand those
couldn't.
out. So it has 4 parts to it. The first part is adding the two the two terms that are defined
Yeah.
to the use chart.
Okay, it's in there. I have it anyway, but okay.
So I just have one left.
Thank you.
So the first part takes out office of a doctor or dentist, not a resident on the premises, and replaces it with the term office of a healthcare professional. It doesn't change any of the districts where that's allowed.
Okay.
That remains allowed by right in local business A, local business B, highway business, industrial office, and ARO. It is allowed by special permit from the zoning board of review in the general residence district. So the same thing you have now. But then it adds a new term that's defined in the article but never before in the use chart, medical center or clinic. And it makes that use prohibited everywhere except for in the industrial district, only within University Station. So
Which is what
only by
already exists.
approval of the
Right.
University Avenue mixed-use
it
district.
just says no to everywhere else.
It
But right
does.
now, it doesn't say
Right.
no to
It
everywhere.
doesn't change what we're doing now. It changes the bylaw to clearly reflect what we're doing. So in some ways, it's almost housekeeping, that it's just taking the process that we have now and correcting the language to bring it to complete clarity, so everyone understands that that's the way the bylaw has been interpreted. Then there are 2 minor sections where there's a section under the FMUOD section where it uses the term office of a doctor or a dentist as an allowed use, and it replaces the term there as well with office of a healthcare professional. And then in another section on section 6.1.2, which is our table of parking requirements, it does the same thing, replaces the term office of a doctor or dentist with office of a healthcare professional, just for the sake of clarity.
So, I suppose to beg the question, what is a healthcare professional that a dentist or a doctor is not?
So there's a definition
Okay.
that is, it's probably a little bit more broad than doctor or dentist. Let me just read to you what. The definition that's in the bylaw now for office of a healthcare professional is an office for a medical doctor, dentist, psychologist, chiropractor, acupuncturist, or similar physical or mental health care professional including clinical and laboratory analysis activities directly associated with such medical office use, but excluding offices within medical centers or clinics. So that's the definition that's already in there. Office of a doctor or dentist not a resident on the premises is undefined.
Okay.
That's too
And old,
restrictive.
and old.
And old. It probably dates back to the original bylaw. I haven't gone back to look through all of them to see when it came in, but
Chris has been asking to say something. What would you
Just,
like to comment?
thank you, Madam Chair. To Member Walsh's question, one of the questions, when you talked about going back to the planning board,
Yes.
I would certainly ask town council procedurally how we would do that if they've already voted to withdraw the article.
Okay.
I think they'd have to, I think one of the people who voted to withdraw the article would have to make a motion to reconsider,
Okay.
just like you would have to, or town meeting would have to.
Well, and as I said, I would ask the planning board, this is a little different than we normally do things, to have an article stop in one place and come to another, but we're only trying to accomplish a narrow portion of what was discussed. We understand they want more time. And you're giving us a very specific, focused recommendation. I would hope they would support this. It is more easily digestible. It doesn't require the debate, let's call it, over locations of where things get identified for location, even though, as I said before, right now the things that people were worried about are allowed everywhere, and some people were happy walking away with that knowledge. That's fine. We need to have the discussion, but we know it needs more time. And the planning board has been taking on a lot of things this year with all the different plans that you're discussing and the comprehensive plan being so important. So we are just trying to help get something important done. That's how I look at it. And I would support doing this. It's focused. I think it's understandable. We have a lot of new people on Finance Commission. I think we need to have them understand just what this is. We'll give them a context, but I think we can do this, and I think we can be successful for the town. You know, it's really just protecting the town's
Madam
interests.
Chair, if I could, excuse me, Nora, if you could just explain briefly the
trouble with
notification
brevity.
that went into the paper last week.
Oh, yes.
And even though that notification went in, what you're proposing, how that would still comply.
yes. So the notification went into the paper immediately following the planning board's request for withdrawal of the article, but prior to this board's consideration of that request. So the planning board's
It
notice.
wasn't officially withdrawn because we hadn't addressed it.
Correct, correct. And if you were going to take it up, it's still a zoning article, and
Yeah.
either way, it would have to go before the planning board for a public hearing. So the notice that went in the paper is the notice of any zoning application, any zoning amendment article that would be discussed by the planning board at their public hearing. Because we didn't know the extent that this article would be in its final form, we advertised it as two options, one option being exactly what I discussed with you today, and the second option being the proposal that was at that time before the planning board, which is a more extensive change, including the additional definitions and a zoning map change to find a place where those uses would be permitted.
So, okay,
So the only place that the medical center and clinic is allowed is University Station pursuant to this article, right?
Pursuant to this article, yes.
amendment.
Mr. Walsh, if you
Amendment, sorry.
recall, you also have a development agreement with the developers of Westwood Station that
Yes.
gives you greater degree of control over what can go in down
Correct.
there as well.
Yes.
So you have, if this article would be successful, you would have both zoning control and you'd have the development agreement to protect the town's tax base.
So I
And
have
there would be no question
Procedural.
about where
Right.
it was allowed outside of University Station. That's the question that's there now, and that's the door
That's
that
the
has
one.
to be closed.
Right. And this would say nowhere.
Yeah, nowhere else.
Okay.
Procedural
Okay.
question.
Yes.
So right now, as it stands before we make a decision, an article was being discussed by the planning board, which is noticed in the paper. They have voted to remove that article, sending it to us to decide whether or not we actually do. Is it better to just change the sponsorship of that article and rewrite, narrow it down to this? Or is it better to accept that withdrawal of the article, vote to approve that, and create a new article under the
I don't think it makes much of a difference, to be
Okay.
brutally honest with you. You still have a placeholder that you have not voted to withdraw,
Right.
and you are amending that
And the sponsorship.
and
Sponsorship
accepting the
and language.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
And language that
And
has been
language.
discussed so far.
So I guess I would, from you never know perspective, I don't know, we've already taken one away tonight. We're down to 3
Right.
reserved articles. I would encourage you to try and utilize the existing
Well,
article.
so then I'm going to change my question. The way the article was placed on the warrant is just the title of the article
Yes.
and not the content.
Yes,
That's
And it
correct.
always provided flexibility for changing what's
correct.
brought forward or amending it as it goes through the Finance Commission review
Right,
process.
the content doesn't have to be finalized until it goes through that process.
And for their approval or
And the language
vote.
doesn't even have to be written for discussion purposes until the ad was due to be placed. So no matter which way you went with the change of
Okay.
sponsorship or a new
So I'd
article,
say we
the
just-
ad would be the same.
I just say we change this, vote to change the sponsorship with an invitation to the planning board to join on.
Madam Chair, interesting question. What if they refuse to take up the article? Has that ever happened before?
So the planning board is required to either hold a public hearing on a planning board, on a zoning
On a zoning.
amendment article, or for a period of time during which they had an opportunity to hold that hearing and make a recommendation pass. So I believe there are communities
passes by
in the
default.
past where planning boards have chosen not to make a recommendation, but there's a period of time during which they have to make the recommendation or allow the recommendation
Okay.
to not be made. It's,
So you can take a
we can
pass.
report back on that. The-
It's like a
the
pocket
board,
veto.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the board can act,
or a neutral.
the town meeting can act
It will come up on their agenda.
in favor of or opposed to a recommendation from the planning board. The planning board can, in some instances, and I don't think it's ever happened in Westwood, but there is a way for a planning board to fail to make a recommendation and an article to continue as long as the planning board had the opportunity to make the recommendation. The hearing will be held. So it's been advertised, it's before them, that's their responsibility to hear it. That's not the only zoning article they're not sponsoring. The other zoning article is the potential Obed Baker House zoning article, which is sponsored by the select board. If there had been petition articles, they would be put into the public hearing. So the planning board has the obligation to hear it. In the end, if for some reason something happened that they were unable to complete their responsibilities, the articles can still move forward as long as the time limits are
And ultimately,
satisfied.
FinCom has a decision as to whether it goes forward.
their-
or
their
Well,
recommendation-
They make a recommendation to town
Which
meeting.
is the action that is
Goes forward
heard,
the way.
Yeah,
which is the action that's initially heard at town meeting.
okay.
All right. So again, I recommend that this board change the sponsorship of the medical use zoning amendment article and proceed with a scaled-down focus of what the amendment will contain, consistent with what we discussed here tonight. That's what I recommend we do.
So I'm going to say, because it took out the clinics for treatment clinics, that I'm going to continue.
You're going to make that
Yeah.
amendment, you're going to make that motion? You
I
have to, you have to say it. You have to
I move that we,
Say so moved.
You can say something. It's hard
I
to
move
set
that
it
the
up for that.
planning, that the article withdrawn by the planning board be sponsored by the selectmen as modified for just sections 4.1.5.22 and 4.1.5.23 of the principal uses for commercial uses be amended as written.
Well, I think there are more things than that, so you might want to, because there's number 2, number 3, and number 4.
Okay, that we
So-
also amend section 4.2 by adding a new note 8 to read as follows, and renumber subsequent notes as appropriate. And footnote 8, except in accordance with all applicable provisions of section 9.7, which refers to the University Ave Mixed Use District, or the UAMUD. And 3, amend section 9.5.8.1.9 use by permitted the FMUOD special permit in any FUMOD to replace Office of the Doctor or Dentist with Office of Healthcare Professional as follows, under 9.5.8.1.9. And further, that we amend section 6.1.2, the table of parking requirements, to replace sections 6.1.5.3, Office of the Doctor or Dentist, with the Office of Healthcare Professional as follows. That's 6.1.3, 6.1.5.3, that one space for each 250 square feet of floor area or fraction thereof be devoted to selling, storage, service, or other activities related to such use, exclusive of cellar and basement areas used only for storage or services, incidental to the operation and maintenance of the premises.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, you want me to?
Counsel, are you good with that?
Does that work? Second.
I don't think you can get any more precise than that. No.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think a couple numbers might have been inverted, but we have the document that we refer
Right.
to. So all
The
in favor?
intent is clear.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Nora will proceed with your recommendation. Please have Abby inform the planning board that we understand they need more time on the other elements. We appreciate the work that that was done to revisit this article this time, and we respectfully say that we want to narrow the scope, and we'll take it forward.
I'll do that, and I'll ask her to invite them to consider co-sponsoring the article and to let this board know if they're
And
interested in doing that.
certainly, we would welcome their questions and hopefully their support of it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Norm.
thank you.
Okay, next we have the baseball.
Hold on, I
Italy?
just want to check something. We've got the list of the articles, the ones that have been removed. We have a change in sponsorship. We added one to our list. And also, Nora, Abby would need to inform them that we are starting the discussion for the Article 97 treatment. I suppose they'll want to go forward with theirs as is. We actually have more input to receive, but please let them know.
I will.
Okay, so, nothing else under scheduled action, right? New business. One more, ladies, and then we'll have you come up. 2020. Oh,
Very patient, thank you.
2020 Little League Parade. We look forward to it. On Saturday, May 2nd, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., the Westwood Little League would like to host its annual parade. All the same holds in terms of location, finishing at Morrison Park. Format's the same. They'll have opening day festivities, et cetera, et cetera. The coordinator, Krista Fahey, she will work with the Westwood Police Department regarding the route, the fire department for whatever part they review, and the health department for food permit. And we are excited that they are doing that again this year. So any questions regarding the annual Little League Parade? Okay, motion?
Okay, I move that we approve the Westwood Little League Parade for Saturday, May 2nd, 2020, to begin at 9 a.m. and ending approximately at 11 a.m., contingent upon any final requirements from the Public Safety and Health Department are met.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Town Clerk Dottie Powers. And you have Elaine, you're not going to join her? You're just here for...
Moral support.
Okay. Good times. Dottie, I think at 2 meetings ago, maybe 3 meetings ago, we mentioned the town census had been mailed out, but this is a big year because it's not only town census time, but it's federal census time. So you're here to give us a presentation and let the public know important elements of what's coming up.
Absolutely. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the annual town census that has been processed and mailed to all households. We've been getting a very good response with census forms back. And I just wanted to make it clear, too, for people, the difference between the annual town census and the federal census. So the annual town census is done, it's required by the state, and all municipalities have to do it once a year. And basically what it does is it creates the annual street listing, it projects school enrollment, it's used for housing and related benefits for the elderly, for local emergency responders, and serves as proof of residency, and also veterans benefits, and also helps with in-state tuition at Mass colleges, as well as selection of the juror list. So it's really important that people respond. If they don't respond, they become inactive as a voter. And we don't want that to happen this year because we have a very busy election year. And if you're inactive and you go to the polls, you have to show ID and fill out paperwork. So we'd rather not, have anybody be disenfranchised at the polling places. If for some reason people have not received their census, they can always download a census form if they've misplaced it on the website. They can also either send the annual town census back to us or they can email it. Now,
And they can come into town
and
hall
they
and
can come
see
into
you if
town
they
hall
need,
and
if
drop
they
it
would
off, which
prefer.
people have been doing that.
Yeah.
And the next big thing we have, and it's really important for the community to understand about the federal census, and I'm just going to go through a quick little, fun little video here.
Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country.
You shut it off.
Questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on 20 census. Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better.
How does the 2020 census affect representation? There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. These get distributed to the 50 states by population, and an accurate census response helps your state get the right amount of seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire. And there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Okay.
That was a good overview. And what is the census, the decennial census? Every 10 years since 1790, federal government conducts a population count of everyone in the United States. It's mandated by the U.S. Constitution. They collect basic information about people living in your household. When you are completing the census, you should count everyone who is living in your household on April 1st, 2020. That seems to be a question we have from a lot of people that have college students. If they're not in the home on April 1st, they're not to be counted. The responses, as you saw in the clip, they're safe and secure. Any personal information collected is kept strictly confidential, and responses are only used to produce statistics and cannot be used for law enforcement purposes or to determine your personal eligibility for government benefits. The Census Bureau has a robust cybersecurity program, and this is what people are concerned about as well. And they have the industry best practices and federal security standards for encrypting data. There is a census timeline here. Between March 12th and March 30th, there'll be an invitation that will be sent to all households to respond online. 95% will also receive a paper questionnaire. They'll also be available in English and 12 other languages. March 16th through 24th, a reminder letter will go out by U.S. postal mail. March 26th through April 3rd, another reminder postcard will be sent by U.S. postal mail. And April 1st, 2020 is the day, National Census Day. It's observed nationwide, and by this date, every home should receive an invitation to participate in the 2020 census. Once the invitation arrives, you should respond for your home in one of three ways, as we saw in the film clip: online, by phone, or by mail. And when completing the census, you'll include everyone living in your home on April 1st. Census Day will be celebrated with events across the country. In April 2020, census takers will begin visiting college students who live on campus, people living in senior centers, and others who live among large groups of people. Census takers also begin conducting quality check interviews to help ensure an accurate count. April 4th through 16th, another reminder letter and paper questionnaire will be sent by U.S. postal mail. April 20th through 27th, a final reminder postcard will be sent by U.S. postal mail before Census Bureau workers follow up in person. June 20th through July 20th, census takers, enumerators will go door to door to count people who have not responded to the 2020 census. They will provide proof that they're official government personnel. December 31st, 2020, the Census Bureau will report to the President the population count and apportionment of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives to each state. In the spring of 2021, the initial 2020 census data will be available to the public on census.gov. March 31st, 2021, redistricting counts will be submitted to the individual states. And why is it important to respond to the 2020 census? These statistics will help plan for a variety of residents' needs, including roads, schools, and emergency services. The data will be used to plan new homes and improve neighborhoods. Businesses will use the data to provide more local jobs and places to shop. And most importantly, approximately $675 billion in federal funds, grants, and support to states and counties and communities for schools, hospitals, roads, public works, and other vital programs are determined with this data. Census data will be used to redraw the boundaries of congressional and state legislative districts, determining the number of representative seats each state will get in Congress. It's your civic duty. It's a way of participating in our democracy by saying, "I count." There's also some great employment opportunities. They're hiring thousands of people across the country to assist with the count. It's your chance to play an important part in history to help ensure that our community is counted. Most of the positions will last several weeks. They're temporary positions and can include census takers, recruiting assistants, office staff, supervisory staff. The Census Bureau is committed to hiring people to work in the area where they live, and because you're most familiar with the people in places within your own community. To apply, you can go to 2020census.gov/jobs or call 1-855-562-2020.
I have a couple questions. If a student is at school and the family's told, don't count the student, how will the student receive notification that they need to fill something out? Because obviously they exist somewhere.
So the schools will be responsible for that. They'll get one census form for the school, so they'll be
so
counted.
the students themselves won't fill it out, the universities, the colleges, the whatevers will fill it out?
It's the same thing with like our, some of our elderly homes here. Not the individuals, but the assisted living over on University Ave, it will be the same thing there.
And is it correct that the message is for people during the time that they should be completing it, they would not receive a phone call asking for information? It would only happen through the mail or somebody coming to the door who identifies themselves with a clear government ID?
Yes.
So no one should expect a call, just like the IRS doesn't call people.
No, they shouldn't.
Any call that somebody's saying they're doing the census should be a call not taken or not responded to. If you've answered it, hang up.
Absolutely. And when we do start having the enumerators come around, we'll make sure that we know, and the police will be, they'll have to check in with them.
Well, I think we should have reminders at our meetings during that period at the beginning, just to tell people again and again.
Certainly.
And whatever else you might think of.
And I think what I'd like to do too, and I've talked to Melinda, to put some more public service announcements on Westcat.
That's a good idea.
And, I failed to mention in the beginning, so we've been working on this since probably 2018, just trying to get ready, making sure that our addresses are all correct. We got a list, myself and Hans went through a lot of addresses, and so all of that is done, all of the new construction that's been happening over the past couple of years, that's all in there. So
capturing.
Yeah,
Good.
we captured all of that. And also we had a perambulator meet with us on Friday. And the other part of it, which you have in your packet, is the validation, the boundary, the
Yes,
PL.
town lines.
Yep, the town lines. So that, we took the map that the Census Bureau sent, and so Steve Springer and Chris, Hans, and myself took a look at it, and they concluded that the boundary lines look correct, that the Census Bureau had. And what is going to happen probably in the spring, and I guess every 5 years the town has to do it, they have to go and check the boundary lines. So we'll be doing that in the spring, and Chris will let
We had
everybody
some.
know.
Isn't it
That'll be a little field
Sorry?
trip.
Isn't it supposed to be annually?
It's every
I don't-
every
Every
5
5
years
years,
is
I
what the
think.
law
The
says.
minimum, you can do
I-
more.
Yeah, whatever. Thank you. We'll
It'll be
adhere
a
to
little-
whatever the
it'll be a
requirement
little-
is.
It'll be a little road trip.
Yeah, interesting.
We had someone who just did it. He was
Yeah.
in to talk
Steve
about
was
it.
in
Steve was in
before.
to talk about it, yes.
Steve Springer?
Yeah,
Yes.
last year.
But yeah, we met him because we checked with him.
He's the person we
Yep.
appointed, yes.
Yep.
So if we're doing it again, we're doing it coterminous with the census, the 2020 census?
Yes, and I don't think he's done a report yet. Has he submitted a report to you?
Last year he did.
Last year he did. Okay. I thought
Right,
it was
that's
every
your
5
memory
years.
too?
Yes, yes,
John, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
I do.
Thank you, Dottie.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
go
you,
ahead.
So Dottie, and if you don't know, that's okay. So how will, someone rings my doorbell and says, I'm here from the census because I didn't return it. Okay, bad boy, didn't return my census. How will people be able to identify, whether or not this actually is a government worker, or do you have any
They're going to
idea?
have a badge, they're going to have an ID.
Okay. I mean, it's not for me, obviously, it's for the public, because
no.
I'll return mine on time.
No,
so-
I mean, I wouldn't answer the door to any, they're going to have a valid ID. They'll also have, when they did it in 2010, they have a laptop. They'll have a bag with them that says Federal Census Worker.
Okay.
So they'll have proper ID. I wouldn't let
I mean, the
any-
best thing is to complete it when you
Right.
receive the form.
Absolutely.
And call town hall if you haven't, knowing that it's supposed to be coming, and find out how you can get the
Yeah,
form
we're
if
more
it
than
didn't come
happy
to
to
you,
assist
whatever.
people, because
Yeah.
it's really important.
Any question you
to
have,
count
ask
everybody.
Dottie.
I mean, I asked that because I'm concerned about some seniors who are just
Right.
not going to pay attention to it. And so, since I'll take this public opportunity to say, if you have elderly neighbors, maybe you can help them fill it out and help them return it,
Right.
so that they don't have
Yeah.
to have a government worker visit them.
Or family
And I
members that
know
can.
that the Council on Aging may be working to help with that as well.
That's great.
Lena's working
I
with
will
Tricia
say,
at the library
public service
to
announcement.
establish a program to
Yes.
help seniors who
That's
may have any
terrific.
The
questions.
signs I've seen pay $25 to $30 an hour is what I've seen them for. So if you're looking for part-time work,
$27.50.
Yes, 2750 is the latest.
Okay.
Thank you,
Well, thank
Dottie.
you for your time.
We have minutes from our last meeting. Oh, one more item.
There's three
Yes, we have one
appointments.
old business item. We have appointments for Dottie, because she's got a busy election season coming up. So, Dottie would like us to appoint the following residents as election officers: Pamela Cummings, Ernie Greppin, and Dolores Marmol. Any questions?
No.
so I move that we appoint Pamela Cummings, Ernest Greppin, and Dolores Mamo as election officers for a term to end in June 30th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Now we can do minutes. from our meeting on January 21st. Good night,
you.
ladies.
Thank you, Dottie.
Good night.
Thanks for waiting.
They knew. All right, so 8 pages of minutes, but I have no edits.
I already made mine. Yeah.
Little typo.
Okay, so what we have?
So I read them. You see that? That's how. Yes, thank you. Chris, do we know when Beta will finish their review of the end of 109?
We shouldn't really.
No? Okay.
We don't have it as an agenda item.
Never mind, I'll withdraw that question.
Thank you.
All set, John?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yep.
I move that we approve the Select Board minutes of January 21st, 2020, consisting of 8 pages as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. We are not going into executive session this evening. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 24th, 2020. Before we adjourn, I would like to say that if you could ask Jane, who is the administrative person for the Finance Commission, if we can be added to the agenda next week to do a discussion presentation on the article we added and the article amended, we would appreciate it. I think it'd be good, since the previewing was last week, if we can get in the opportunity to preview it before the public hearing, we can get some feedback early. Okay. Motion to adjourn? Oh, public and press. Public, press, or staff?
I just thought of one other thing. So when there's an article, a zoning article that doesn't originate from the planning board, the select board needs to refer that article to the planning board, and that's something Chris would do, but I don't know if you ordinarily vote to refer the article to the planning board or if it's just an action. I just don't want to miss that if that's a necessary vote.
If you find we need to, I don't
You want me
think,
to just do it?
I was going to say
I
we
wouldn't
could do it
vote
on
though
the
without it being
24th.
noticed.
Right,
Yes.
I think we can do it on the 24th
Right, if
because
we
the
need to.
meeting is the 25th. It's noticed, right?
It is
So we'll be
noticed.
meeting, so just if you could check into that and add it to the agenda if we need to. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's probably just a procedural requirement that doesn't require a vote, but
Okay.
I need to look into that to make
Thank you.
sure.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You can call me Friday.